How deep does the rabbit hole go? And how bizarre! Hello, this is Shores of Infinity with your host Chris speaking. The question, how deep does the rabbit hole towards enlightenment go? Very, very deep is the short answer. The long answer is it's super absurd and bizarre what happens there. That is why Alice in Chains, no, that's a band, Alice in Wonderland by Lewis Carroll is one of the best books describing enlightenment in a humorous way. Aurobindo's Savitri is also really good, or Bernadette Roberts' books, but Lewis Carroll decided he can do it in a funny way. It's not really a children's story. It's a story of enlightenment disguised as a children's story. The dude was an Oxford maths professor. And he also used it as a children's story, of course, but most people mistake it as a children's story. And I'm not talking about the Tim Burton movies. The Tim Burton movies, they may be creative and the actors very good, but it has nothing to do with the book. Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass are amazing descriptions of what happens in finder's location terms, because we're discussing finder's locations recently on Patreon. Locations 5 to about 10 or 11. So it's the stretch of the path between awakening and full enlightenment, which is what some people call enlightenment, and we call it done by now, because you feel done. But there are several stages there, and the main interesting thing is that here time and space become very, very relative, and thus weird things happening. This is where crazy shit happens. Things like cities and time disappearing or stopping, space and matter not necessarily disappearing, but they become meaningless. And in these other states of consciousness, or even subtle, vital, mental worlds you may enter, you will have very interesting meetings with beings, maybe, or just plain weird situations and sensations. This will become so weird that you turn around and want to talk to normal people in what you previously called reality, only to find out that they're at least as weird. That's why all the conversations in Alice in Wonderland and the adventures of Alice in Wonderland are absolutely bonkers. And there's a guy who's a hatter, who's as mad as a hatter, but everyone is mad, especially the royalty. There's the Queen, for example. The Queen of Hearts, who always says, "Off with her head!" And this is emotions. The Queen of Hearts stands for emotions. The emotions always want to decide everything immediately, and often violently, dramatically. And then there are people like the Duchess or Humpty Dumpty, who stand for the mind, who want to explain everything all the time and be correct about things all the time. And the moral of this is, I really recommend you to read those books. They're two of the highest calibrating books that you can find. And if you don't like to read, there are audible versions of this, about 20 or 30 if you look on Amazon, and there's one read by Michael Page. I think that's the best version. Anyway, how deep does the rabbit hole go? We know this from the movie The Matrix, which is influenced by Alice in Wonderland, Plato's cave metaphor, and Jean Baudrillard's book. There's also a video about that book. And the gist of all these books and this movie and so on is to question reality. What exactly is reality? What's real? What's true? And the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, the more you will realize truth and reality, very fishy subjects, very, very unclear. And there's also not only one level, as you know from the Matrix movies maybe. It's not that you take the blue or the red pill and that's it. There's one layer after another, after another, after another of Maya. Maya is a very complex thing. It's not only one thing, it's layer upon layer upon layer, veil upon veil upon veil. And whenever you think, okay, that's it, I'm done, I got it now, I arrived, it's probably wrong. It's just another trap, another very convincing veil that is not the truth, that is not reality, and you have to go behind again. And on the path, sometimes things seem to be clearer and clearer, and sometimes they seem to be more and more confusing. Sometimes everything seems to be one and beautiful, and sometimes everything seems to be totally absurd and bizarre. Sometimes it seems you're high up, and sometimes you think you don't know anything. Sometimes you have the impression that you are the divine. And sometimes you have the impression that you're just a speck of dust floating through space. The tricky thing is you can't really describe it. It's so outlandish and alien sometimes. Sometimes it's so simple and you think, oh my God, it's that simple. Oh no! Oh yes, but sometimes it's so outlandish and alien that you can't put it into words. So then you need people like Lewis Carroll and J.R.R. Tolkien to put it into a fantasy setting or a children's story, a parent children's story. Or you need someone like Aurobindo to put it into an epic poem, or George Bernard Shaw or some other poet or author or artist. Now there are different forms of arts, of course, that can put this, try to capture it. It's usually not dramatic, yeah. If we look at Lord of the Rings and Alice in Wonderland through the looking glass, it creates the impression it's dramatic. It's not dramatic, but it's... The defining feature is that what we previously called reality, what most people call reality, ceases to be reality. And of course you could say, that has also been discussed in our groups, that sounds a bit like psychosis, but it's not, because it feels like that you're finally waking up from psychosis, you're finally waking up from madness, or from sleep and dream. So it feels more real. You know, it's not the ultimate reality, but it's more real than the other stuff that is definitely not reality, that everyone else believes in, which is brainwashing and pure madness. So you're surrounded by madness, which is what's happening in Alice in Wonderland, on all sides surrounded by madness, going back and forth from place to place, from state of consciousness to state of consciousness, and everyone's mad. The only thing or being whom she meets that might not be mad is a Cheshire cat, which is definitely crazy, in a way. In my view, that's actually Maya, it or herself, showing itself sometimes, playing her jokes upon the poor creatures who try to understand her. It's a one-way street though. Once you decide to go down the rabbit hole, and here the Matrix is correct, there's no way back. There's no way back. Sometimes you might wish that there was a way back, but there isn't. So this craziness will never leave you, and you will always see through some illusions, and yeah, this often creates a sense of profound loneliness, because you know that you may be 1 in a million or 1 in 10 million, and everyone else doesn't see and experience what you see and experience. And when I say experience, and this is another thing we've discussed recently in the groups, it's a real experience, like going to the toilet, taking a shower, eating good food, enjoying a sunset, swimming in the ocean, something like this. These are experiences that you can feel with all your senses. I'm not talking about thoughts, emotions, visions, and so on. Except, of course, if you have premonitions that then become true. That, that's not really an experience, but it also counts as something out of that range of consciousness. And here these things that we also talked about can happen, that you experience a void, a nothingness, or a unity, or time disappearing or stopping, or that you forget stuff. Or Jeffrey Martin talks about neurological glitches. It does something with your body. He calls it dissembling and reintegration. If this dissembling and reintegration goes on all the time in your system, may confuse your nerves, and then there may be some glitches in the matrix. No, glitches in movement, for example. But more and more, the whole fucking thing appears to be some kind of holodeck. More and more, it is clear to you that reality is not real. And definitely not true. I made a video recently what is not meant with leaving the matrix. This is meant with leaving the matrix. First you have to see that all is matrix, all is Maya, and then to lift veil after veil after veil and come closer and closer to something that could maybe be called reality. And it can become scary at sometimes, because sometimes you doubt that you will still be able to communicate to other people. And you hope that the bloody hell people wake up soon. Please, majority of humanity, wake up soon. Yeah, that's probably the only hope that some time is left. And you know that you can't save them. They can only decide to stop and grow up and wake up themselves. And of course, decapitation is the solution. There's a book even on having no head, I think it's called, also about awakening and enlightenment. So of course the solution of the Queen of Hearts is a good solution. Off with her head! Away with the brain, away with the thought, with the mind. Only pure experience in the now. But where? That is a big question. Where are we? If this is a holodeck, where are we really? Where is this holodeck? But this is a question for much later. This is a question for location 12 plus, for third tier spiral dynamics, for 700 plus on the Hawkins scale, if you want to put it into terminology and words. First, you need to wake up. After waking up, you have to go through all these bizarre and absurd stages until full enlightenment can happen. And something like the truth is revealed, but not to you, because by that time you will have disassembled and reintegrated and reassembled so often that there is no self left. which is never better explained than by Bernadette Roberts. So how deep does the rabbit hole go? Very, very, very deep. And there's not only one entrance and one exit, it's a whole maze of rabbit tunnels. It's not just one hole. And to be able to navigate these tunnels, these holes, it is necessary to stop the world. I really like that in Carlos Castaneda's book. He might have been an ass, but his books are really good. At least the early ones. You need to stop the world. You need to stop your inner dialogue. That's really, I keep repeating that is a prerequisite to anything. Unbidden thoughts, unbidden babbling in your head need to stop first before anything else can happen. Otherwise, everything is just mindfuck. It stays theory. Thinking about what could happen when is not really interesting. It's not spirituality either. It's just thinking about stuff. It's theoretical philosophy at best. Never assume that you're done, that this is it, and just enjoy. Don't take things seriously. Nothing can happen. Nothing serious can happen. It's a holodeck. So just enjoy the ride and keep letting go. Keep lifting veils. Don't believe anything. It's all just trickery.
And it's absurd, bizarre, and crazy.
Off with your head. Thank you for listening, subscribing, and joining me on Patreon. And thank you to my Patreons.
And stop being so serious, Chris. Who are you talking to? Why am I talking to myself?